PSG have just beaten Arsenal 1-0 at the Emirates, and I can't lie, I thought it was a bit of a flat game. I felt like none of the teams really took their chances. To be honest, I think, Barcola could have scored, Ramos could have scored late, Martinelli should have scored, very good save on Trossard. Obviously, the Merino goal ruled out just for being offside. But look, I don't think Arsenal were bad, but I don't think they were good. I think they were underwhelming. I think they were flat. And other than the last 15 minutes of the first half, where Saka grew into the game and then he was sort of quiet for the rest of the game, I thought it was a flat performance from Arsenal. I felt that Arteta maybe ran out of ideas, but then I also looked at who's on PSG's bench and who's on Arsenal's bench, and I was like, look, PSG are the best team in the Champions League. The quality of PSG this season is absolutely insane. Barcola can come off the bench, Dembele, Desiree Doué, Kvaratskhelia, Vitinha, João Neves, Fabian Ruiz, fantastic. The weak point of PSG is like probably Marquinhos, who had a fantastic game, and probably Donnarumma, that had a fantastic game. And in today's video, we're going to break down this game because Arsenal actually had the higher XG, possession was somewhat equal, but it did sometimes feel like PSG had that extra man because Captain Odegaard was invisible today. Now, we're going to have a talk about this game. We're going to have a talk about Arsenal, the big problems they faced, the good, the bad. I thought Lewis Skelly was excellent today. I thought Declan Rice showed up. I thought Saliba showed up. I thought they were very good today. Trossard back to goal. Oof. They need Merino back in the 9. They need Thomas Partey back. We're going to talk about the game. I also just want to say the Emirates was like a library. Arsenal fans, you need to be louder. You need to be louder. We're going to talk about everything. First of all, PSG going 1-0 up early. Advantage PSG. I said if Arsenal go 1-0 up, they win. Because Arsenal can defend. What Arsenal can't do is break down low blocks. PSG go 1-0 up. They've got a low block. You've got to break that down. And that makes it difficult. Now, this PSG side is insane. And I think with no Gabriel, no Havertz, no Partey, I think, weirdly, I thought Arsenal were going to win it because of just the physicality and what they did in the group stage. But I think PSG were favourites going into this. So let's talk about the game. Martin Odegaard. We need to have a serious conversation about Martin Odegaard because I thought last season he was excellent and I think he does his best work with Ben White and Saka both on the pitch who've had long absences this season. But this isn't just a one-off game from Odegaard. Martin Odegaard has not been good this season, particularly since his injury. He's been poor. I don't know if the injury's affected him. I don't know if he's not fully fit. But what worries me about Martin Odegaard is his inability to impact games. I feel like he's relying too much on the players around him, too much of a system player, and he sometimes lacks the individual brilliance in moments. I felt today if something was going to happen for Arsenal, it was going to be Saka individual brilliance. But Nuno Mendes, best left back in the world, best defensive left back in the world, best left back one-on-one, Saka was struggling. Saka had a good 10, 15 minutes at the end of the first half. I was like, Saka's looking good. Second half, don't remember Saka. And Martin Odegaard, your captain, the guy you want to deliver has got to step up. I watched Man United. We are crap. We are rubbish. And how many times Man United could have lost games or done absolutely nothing, but Bruno Fernandes has been there, playing in a deeper role than Odegaard this season, and stepped up for Man United because he's captain, he's the best player, and he takes those risks. And Odegaard does not do that. It took, in the first 22 minutes, Odegaard made one pass. 0 out of 3 crosses arrived, 0 out of 0 long balls, 0 shots on target, 0 shots off target, 5 out of 6 dribbles failed. 14 times possession lost in a game like this, where, overturns of possession is important versus PSG. 6 out of 8 ground draws lost. It was poor from Martin Odegaard. It was a worrying performance. And Ranieri probably could have come on 10 minutes sooner because Odegaard created 1 chance in 90 minutes when Ranieri created 1 in 5. And when this is your biggest game of the season, you need more from the captain. I know that everybody's going to be jumping on Martin Odegaard, and I don't like to gang up on a player that's being jumped on. I still believe that Odegaard is a good player. But he's not showing up for Arsenal when you need him. He's going missing. And I think Arteta, he didn't have much on the bench. Could Trossard have come off for Ranieri? Could Odegaard have come off earlier? I think Ranieri, is a young kid, but they needed something different today, Arsenal. And I think not having Havertz, even Jesus would have been a good option. Not having Partey was a huge miss. And I think the second leg will be very different with those players back. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. Martin Odegaard, you need a moments player. In knockout football, you need a player that will just produce a moment, whether it's a world-class goal or a world-class pass that sets up a fantastic moment, even if he has a bad game. Bruno Fernandes had bad games for United, but he's made that pass and played in Garnacho, and we've drawn 1-1, for example. You need players like that, and Odegaard doesn't do that. This is why Real Madrid have won games while not being at their best. It's having players in that moment, Jude Bellingham, Bruno Fernandes, Mohamed Salah, and I felt that Arsenal, they didn't have that today. They did not have that today. Now, let's talk about it. A flat performance in the big game, but not a disastrous result. PSG are the favourites. PSG arguably are the best team in the Champions League, better than Barcelona. PSG are the closest to that 2011 Barcelona side. The football they play, pure football, the intelligence. This PSG side is unbelievable. And losing 1-0 to PSG, I think because Arsenal's season sort of rides on this Champions League, losing out in the Premier League so early, but losing to this PSG side isn't the be-all and end-all. They're a fantastic side, and you've got to remember that. They scored early. Emirates went absolutely quiet. Emirates was a library. That allowed them to sit back, control the game. Arsenal go 1-0 up. Arsenal go through, because Arsenal can defend leads. You know, you did that versus Real Madrid. Arsenal go 1-0 down, and you've got to break teams down. That's where you struggle. Now, I'll tell you this, PSG, Villa caused them issues. Liverpool in the second leg probably should have beaten them at Anfield and went out on penalties. PSG are gettable, but Arsenal need to be there. And I think if they have Havertz, you've got Declan Rice and Partey, it's different. And I think Arsenal grew into the first half. I thought you went 1-0 down so early. I sometimes think Arsenal lack mentality in a weird way, because I think they've shown mentality in the Premier League, but I felt that going 1-0 down after 4 minutes, it rocked you a bit. And I thought the first 25 minutes you were really poor. And then those last 15 minutes of the first half, you really grew into it. And you ended the first half like, oh, okay, I see Arsenal scoring this. There's something here. Saka was looking electric. But you just didn't really come out in the second half. I think the momentum of the Merino goal being ruled out I don't know. I sometimes think Arsenal have been unlucky with refereeing decisions this season or calls, and then when they've had a red card or they've not been given a penalty, I feel like it can disrupt their momentum a lot more than other sides. And I think, Arsenal, definitely Martinelli should have scored. Donnarumma, fantastic save. Yeah, Arsenal could most definitely have scored today, but look, Barcola could have scored, Ramos could have scored, and I think I think Arsenal will get a goal, believe it or not, at the Parc de France, and I think PSG will look at that, and if they don't go through to the final, they'll look at Ramos and they'll look at Barcola. But there's fine margins, and I think today, Dembele's goal was almost a little bit lucky in a weird sense, it just fell off. It just fell for him. I think today was about who took their chances. And Martinelli scored and Trossard scored and Dembele not got a bit of luck with it coming off his shin in the goal. Arsenal going 2-0, and it's a very different narrative. And I think in these games, it's taking your chances. And I think one thing Arsenal haven't done this season as a collective in the league is they've not been as clinical as Liverpool in the Premier League this season. I think them not having a striker, them not having a top left winger. And I think Martinelli actually was okay in terms of his dribbling, in terms of causing Hakimi problems. It's the end product he lacks. He reminds me a little bit of Garnacho. I think he makes impact and he can make things happen and he can move the ball. You just need to be better when it comes to that shot. But I think the chances is the big difference, and PSG took it today. They took the chance. They were wasteful and also wasteful, but the game could have been 2-2 on a different day. I don't think it was a bad performance from Arsenal. And I think people are creating this narrative that Arsenal were shocking. I don't think Arsenal were shocking. I think they're up against a very good side. I think they struggled, particularly in the midfield today. I thought Arsenal just weren't good enough. I thought they were flat, but I thought Saliba was really good. I thought Declan Rice was really good. I thought Lewis Skelly was excellent. And I'm going to come to that in a minute, how good Lewis Skelly was for 18 years of age. But we've got to talk about Martin Odegaard. 3 straight poor UCL performances in a row. Even in the Madrid games, which you won, I don't think he was particularly good. 6 passes in the first 22 minutes attempted. I think he only completed 1. 9 times possession lost. 1 out of 6 ground duels. Like Ranieri, I thought created this amount of chances in 5 minutes than he did in 90. I thought the midfield was overrun. I think Partey and Havertz were big misses. I think Merino could have been better further up. And Rice can't hold the press alone. He had to be more defensive. I think you did get quite out of position for the first goal you conceded. And I felt that Arsenal struggled to sustain control in midfield. I thought the moments you did, you could see the Declan Rice brilliance, but you needed a bit more today. I do want to give a shout out to Lewis Skelly. I thought Lewis Skelly is excellent. I'm becoming a huge fan of Lewis Skelly. 18 years of age. He looks so composed, physical and progressive. He's never got beat 1v1. He's coming up against Desiree Doué. He had Kvaratskhelia at times, Dembele at times. I don't remember. Timber got beat, but I don't remember Lewis Skelly getting beaten. What he does is he puts his body in the line. He's so physical. He's so good at taking advantage of his physical strengths that he causes so many issues in terms of like players struggling to get around him. And Desiree Doué is excellent. He did a bit of skill, but Lewis Skelly's just there, and Desiree Doué has to yank his arm, and then all of a sudden you get a foul. I tell you what, the ref was atrocious. The ref was shocking. The Trossard yellow card, ridiculous. The Saka yellow card, ridiculous. Saka should have been allowed to carry on. The ref was pulling it for every little tackle and touch for a foul, giving yellows for nothing. He was atrocious today, wasn't he? But look, Yeah, I thought Lewis Skelly, his pass to Martinelli, which arguably could have made it 1-1, was unreal. The way he used his body. And Lewis Skelly's ball carrying was causing PSG the most problems. When Arsenal were getting the ball and carrying it in that midfield and eating up ground, that's what caused PSG the most problems because Arsenal physical side, PSG are technically good, but they can't cover the same amount of ground as Arsenal. So Arsenal in the second leg needs ball carriers. They need to make PSG run. Saliba was good, Declan Rice was good, but just didn't have that support. I think Martinelli should have scored. I think Trossard, big opportunity, but it was a very good save from Donnarumma. I don't know if I like Trossard as a starter. Trossard as an impact sub is good. Trossard as a starter, I'm not convinced by him. His back to goal play isn't great. He takes too many touches. I thought Arsenal were too safe. I think in that, other than the last 15 minutes of the first half and first 10 minutes of the second half, I felt that it was the 80th minute. And I just thought Arsenal aren't going to score. There's too many sideways passes. There's too much sideways backwards. And this is why I say you need a Bruno Fernandes type midfielder. Somebody that's going to get the ball, on the ball, wants the ball all the time. It's just going to play a pass. He'll give the ball away. It'll be frustrating. He'll kick it out for a throw on sometimes. But he's going to just keep making those passes or those movements or have that shot. And Arsenal lacked that moments player. You can be systems all you want, but you need a moments player. People don't like Bellingham because they think he can ghost and then he scores a goal to cover it up. People don't like Salah because they think he can ghost and scores a goal to cover it up. People used to say the same about Bruno, but since Bruno's been playing deeper, he's actually second for most interceptions in the Premier League. He's up there with chances created, touches. He's underperformed his expected assists more than anybody else in the league this season because you'd have about 10 more assists if our attackers could finish. Arsenal needed that kind of moments player. And I look at Arsenal and I think you need a striker. I think you're going to go for Gyökeres. I think you need a Nico Williams kind of left winger. But I do look at Arsenal. I think you need someone with a bit of flair. Maybe you play Rice and Subamende, but maybe a Morgan Rogers. I look at it and I think maybe a Morgan Rogers, someone with that little bit of flair, maybe a Morgan Rogers, maybe a Xavi Simons would be very good for Arsenal. I have to say, the Emirates. Yeah, that's what the Emirates sounded like. Silence wasn't good enough today. Arsenal fans are wrong for that. You got that wrong. You've got to be loud. Man United forced you down to Lyon. Yeah? But loud, loud, loud. I know some fans will start saying, but loud, loud, loud. It kind of fuels that comeback. And I felt that the Emirates was quiet today. And I'm not saying that's why Arsenal didn't win or didn't score, but you just got to be loud. And I think PSG scoring 4 minutes in, it quietens the atmosphere, and PSG took advantage of that because the atmosphere can influence games. The crowd went silent and didn't get that emotional listen. In the second half, I get it was a flat game, the energy's taken out, but you just sometimes have to just go and go and go and pump it up. I look at Man United's comeback versus Lyon. A lot of fans walked out, but a lot of fans were there chanting and being loud, and the atmosphere can shift momentum. It can create pressure, inject belief, and I felt tonight, Arsenal fans resigned them to the result too early, and probably because it was a lot of backways, sideways passing. Arsenal's seen that before. How many draws have Arsenal had this season where they've not found that winner versus Everton, and they've been frustrated? But Arsenal needed more, I think. Potentially off the pitch. Anyway, let's talk about PSG quickly, and then we'll go back to Arsenal. Desiree Doué, unreal. Skill composure 18 is unreal. João Neves, Vitinha, boss the midfield. I'm such a big fan of them. João Neves was linked to United and Arsenal. He went to PSG. I wish he went to Man United. Nuno Mendes, world class. He shut down Saka, just like he did Salah over 2 legs. He was phenomenal today. Bukayo Saka, for me, a world class player. Massive fan of Bukayo Saka. 15 minutes at the end of the first half, causing issues, but Nuno Mendes shut him down. I think only once Saka got past him. Donnarumma stepped up big time, big saves, commanding the box. PSG are a proper team now. They can suffer, they can play amazing football, they can defend. They're a proper team. And look, going to the Parc des Princes, look what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did with a shite Man United side with half the squad injured and playing the kids. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did it, but that was a very different PSG side. That was the bottled PSG side. But you can go to the Parc des Princes and beat PSG. But not many teams have done that this season. They only lost 1 game now, and that was this week in Ligue 1. They're an unreal side. So it's a big second leg. But 1-0 wasn't a bad result. If you score early, the game is anyone's. If you go and you score early, the game is anyone's. Parties return, Merino pushing higher up, it's going to change the dynamic. But you need to play with more intensity, directness, and anger. I felt Arsenal lacked that anger and passion at times. PSG, they came at Arsenal so fast, they pressed the energy, and I feel like Arsenal underestimated how quick and how at them PSG were going to be and how PSG weren't going to give them any breathing room. You need to do that at the Parc des Princes. Not play it safe. You need to make sure they get no breathing room. Because PSG will regret not killing the game if you get that goal. Because if you score the first goal at Parc des Princes, It's your momentum. PSG are very good, and they're good when we're ahead. When we're coming from behind, when PSG are very much a momentum side, we're sitting in the Champions League. When Villa scored one, they scored another. PSG struggled. Sometimes they can switch like that. And then my final take is knockouts require moments of individual quality. You can't carry passengers. And I think Odegaard as a captain, you've got to do more. Arteta taking his captain off when he needs a goal, it says it all. You need impact, you need creation. And I think I look at Arsenal, left wing, striker, but more of a direct creator. They're the three positions you need. Defensively solid, but it's those three positions, the creative 8 or a 10, a left wing and a striker. I know Martinelli, I think, has got potential, but there's still elements of his game that's raw. I think you're missing a few key pieces. Now, anyway, it might sound like I'm being harsh on Arsenal, this and that, and I like being harsh on Arsenal and I like celebrating PSG's win, but I'm just giving my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. If you think I'm wrong, let me know down below. Like, I think Odegaard's a good player, but I don't think he's been good enough this season. That's my fact. I think Bruno is better, and that's not a Man United bias. It's just, I think that sometimes it's not just about prettiness and passes, it's about making things happen. And I think Arsenal lacked that today. I think Saka's normally the guy, Nuno Mendes did really well. I think Arsenal were missing key players. I thought Lewis Skelly was unreal and he's a crazy player. But I think it's all to play for in the second leg, I will say that.